It's Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. in Switzerland. It's Space Café WebTalk time. Our Space Café WebTalk 33 minutes with Sebastien Moranta will begin soon. Thanks for joining us for this very informative event about the new ESPI study on COVID-19 and the European space sector. As always, we appreciate your participation and your ongoing feedback. I'm Thorsten Kriening, your host today and publisher of SpaceWatch.Global. We are a Switzerland-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I know many of you already are familiar with our website, our bi-weekly newsletters, daily newsletters, and the Space Café podcast. I'm proud to announce that this morning we published episode 6 of our podcast named Proudly Human, the ambitious mission of a woman who seeks new knowledge for our civilization on Mars, featuring Dr. Adriana Marais. Check it out and leave us your comments at podcast@SpaceWatch.Global. We are keen to get your feedback and your ratings, of course. And if you missed any of our previous web talks, we have an archive available on our website in the event sections and now on YouTube as well. We host our Space Café web talks on a weekly basis. This is already the 15th edition. I hope you mark Tuesdays at the same time in your calendar. Today, I'm very honored to be joined by a very special guest, Sebastien Moranta. Sebastien is coordinator of studies at the European Space Policy Institute, ESPI in Vienna, an independent and public think tank providing decision makers with an informed view on short to long-term issues relevant to the European space policy. Prior to supervising the research activities of the Institute, he was a senior associate at Price Waterhouse Coopers Advisory, where he managed multiple studies for public and private space sector stakeholders, and former analyst at Eurospace, the Association of the European Space Industry. He has worked on various space strategy and policy issues. Today, he joins us from his office in Vienna. I'm proud to welcome Sebastien Moranta in my show. Sebastien, hello.
Hello, Thorsten.
So, this morning, you...
Exactly, just this morning.
This morning, just in time for the show, I know, you published this very special study about the current COVID-19 crisis and the European space sector. Can you please give us a quick intro of what we can expect reading the study before we then go deeper into specific topics? The floor is yours.
Sure, thank you very much, Thorsten. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So as you mentioned, I'm coordinator of studies here at the European Space Policy Institute. So to keep it really short, the ESPI, the European Space Policy Institute, is the European think tank for space affairs. And so what happened is we've been hit, just like everyone else, by the COVID-19 crisis. So we had to adapt. And we felt that it was part of our role as a European think tank to keep an eye on the situation and to question its implications for space policy and for the space sector at large. So, as you mentioned, we just recently published the study. I guess we'll be able to share the link with the participants. And I'm very happy to actually have the opportunity already today to discuss the findings, the conclusions of our study with you. So, as I was mentioning, it's available on our website and it's publicly available for free to people visiting our website. So, what we tried to do with this study was to compile available information, available data on two aspects that we believe were quite important. The first one is about how space was used to respond to the crisis. And the second one was about how the space sector was impacted by the crisis. So very quickly, to give you an overview of what people can expect to find in the report. So with regards to the use of space, I believe that it's already well acknowledged, and it was already well acknowledged even before the crisis, that space brings unique solutions for crisis management, and there are already plenty of examples of added value of space in the case of hurricanes, earthquakes, and so on. Now, space solutions, space systems, were primarily envisaged, designed for these to support crisis management for these natural disasters, humanitarian crises. So, space has actually already been used in the frame of an epidemic. There is the case of the value that space brought in the management of the Ebola crisis, but of course, it was never in such unexpected and unparalleled magnitude situation, in particular hitting at the heart of Europe. So what we provide in the report is really plenty of different examples of how space supported different aspects of the management of the crisis. You will find examples regarding the monitoring of the development of the crisis, the situational awareness in general. So I guess there you will find interesting examples, for example, about dashboards that have been developed to monitor a number of indicators and to provide economic intelligence, how space was also used to support the crisis response. And this is important. Here, there were both the use of services already designed, for example, Copernicus emergency services that were used in Italy, in particular to manage facilities. There were also some dedicated applications that were developed, such as Galileo for Greenland, that allowed to facilitate a bit the circulation at borders. But space also supported a number of other things. It supported and it continues to support epidemiologic research. It continues, the space sector has also used some of its capabilities, of its technologies to manufacture respirators, masks, protective equipment. And there were also some unexpected use of space. For example, space was used as an alternative to terrestrial means, for example, to collect weather measures that planes could not take anymore. So ultimately, what we see is that there is really a set of public and private solutions. And it was interesting also to see that public actors were extremely proactive in supporting the development of new dedicated solutions through a number of initiatives. But in there, you will find many other examples of the use of Earth observation satellites, navigation satellites, telecommunication satellites. And we can legitimately expect, I guess, in the near-term future, that space will also support the economic reboot now that the situation is calming down a bit in Europe. We can also expect space will play a role in that. The second part of the report is about the impact of the crisis on the European space sector. So, of course, I guess it's important to say it. It is extremely challenging to assess the impact of the crisis today, and in particular to quantify it. Also, it's important to recall that the crisis is not over, that it still impacts other regions in the world, and that it actually continues to impact Europe. And it may come back in the future. But I guess what we tried to do was to give a flavor of the type of impact that the space sector suffered, and to give a flavor of the magnitude of this impact. So we structured the information in a simplified model to try to give an overview, and where we provide a list of examples of impact regarding the immediate impact on activities, labor, and operations, the impact related to business, so trying to find out how the impact, how it was impacted from an economic perspective, and the longer term impact, wider impact related to the overall economic shock. So I guess we will be able to get into more details during the talk. But I guess that if I had to pick two messages, and I think two core findings of the report on this, is that clearly the space sector has been impacted and will certainly come out of the crisis weakened. And this is important to take stock of it. And the second thing is that beyond the immediate impact that the space sector felt so far, there are also implications on the longer term. And we'll, I guess, be able to discuss about that. Now, the third part, or it's more of a conclusion, is that we try to also discuss and find what could be the implications of the situation, the COVID-19 situation for the future of European space policy, so trying to look forward. So, of course, we are a European think tank for space policy, so we try to, we always find a way to find some implications for space policy, but in this case, I guess that there are really some interesting things. Two major things that we look into is first, what it will take in the future to mitigate the impact of the crisis on the long term. So the public actors already took major steps, and it's very important to acknowledge that. But there is still some questions remaining on the future. And the second thing is the question of the role of space, the place of space in the so-called post-COVID Europe that is becoming an often used term now to discuss about how Europe will emerge and come out of the crisis.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for this quick rundown. Let me ask a few questions to go into it a little bit deeper. When you said for the part one, how space monitors, how the crisis could be monitored from space. For instance, you mentioned the epidemiologic research, hard word.
That's the difficult word.
Okay, but how can that research be supported? So do you have a concrete example what we have seen?
So yes, actually, I guess on this one, if I recall correctly, it is the climate data repository that Copernicus provides that was used to mix information on the spread of the pandemic and some information on air humidity, air pollution, air temperature, and so on, to try to find some correlations and that could help to identify and to understand a bit better the behavior of the virus.
Okay. The other question about the monitoring: how can space help with rebooting the industry? So, are you referencing to the classical services that space data are used for, the GNSS data, the Earth observation data, or is there anything specific, or in this context of rebooting our normal life, whatever the new normal is?
Yeah, so on this, I guess it's still a bit early to understand exactly how concretely, from a general perspective, space is going to contribute to the economic reboot. Now, something we need to take into account is that space solutions are really part of our daily lives. They're really part of business as usual, and are already supporting economy in general, and in particular in Europe. So it's of course difficult to really precisely find already some examples of how space is going to support the reboot of the economy. Mm-hmm. I guess that it will also depend on two things. First, it will depend on the specific needs of each industry, and it will depend on the capacity of the space space sector, and in particular the downstream sector, to develop applications that do fit with the needs of these industries. Mm-hmm. So we will see, and actually we plan to provide an update of the reports that will specifically focus, I guess, on this question of how to reboot economy, but also how to reboot economy in a sustainable way. So the COVID-19 crisis is really shaking up political lines, and there are some new agenda items, some governmental political agenda that are rising up. And this question of sustainable growth, economic resilience will definitely take a more prominent role. And on this, space will definitely play an important role.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would be happy if that crisis helped us to give space the attention that we all hope for, that is seen as critical infrastructure, that is seen as something that we need that we use in our daily life. And we are aware of that.
Torsten, maybe one thing I would like to add also,
sure.
And it's one of the more, let's say, politically oriented conclusions of the report, is that something that the crisis showed is that public actors played really a prominent role in triggering the development of new applications. And on this, public demand will, I guess, also be an important factor to use to make sure that space is really used to the full extent to reboot economy. So it's not only a matter of purely private business-to-business dynamic. It's also a matter of public actors making the right use of space in order to support their economic recovery policies.
Okay. So please, our point to our listeners, you're highly invited to provide your questions. We will pick or we start to picking a few of them that came in already. We have two questions from Stellar talking about what is the expected impact on the venture capital on EU new space companies, or how are private investors changing their behaviors? Are these topics, are you also monitored in your study, or are they too far away from the core?
No.
At least you have an opinion on that. I'm quite sure.
So actually, no, they are part of what we identified as wider economic impacts. So the question of the impact on investment is quite complex. Of course, it will not be exclusively related to the space sector. So there would be a first question on how the finance ecosystem is going to be impacted. And this goes much beyond the space sector and will be very highly dependent on economic policies of the different governments worldwide. So there will be first a question on regarding the situation of this financial ecosystem in the future. There is a second question, which is about whether the investors will see and will change their approach to their strategic portfolio and still give an important place, or at least provide some room to investments in space. My conviction is that actually I do not expect it to change much. It's the situation in the COVID-19 crisis highlighted again, showcased again the role that space can play in even unexpected critical situations. So I don't from a purely strategic perspective, investment in space will come out as a less important thing. Now, this being said, we are all aware that the crisis already had a concrete impact on OneWeb. That was a direct result of a revision of the investment portfolio of SoftBank. So we can actually expect some changes. Now, something that I mean, there are also some already existing examples of successful investments, and we track actually private investment in the European space sector in our report Space Venture Europe, and we are already filling in our database for 2020 with deals even during the pandemic. Now, with regards to investment, there is both. So that was the more external, the question of external investment. From venture capital, from banks, and so on. But there is also a question of internal investment. And on this, there might be a situation that would need to be addressed. Some companies are already reporting the fact that they will not be able to finance some R&D activities and some new activities in the coming years. And this is actually quite critical, and it might have quite a long-term consequence with regards to European competitiveness and innovation in the sector. So clearly, investment will be a topic and should be addressed by this long-term strategic plan to make sure that the space sector recovers from the crisis.
By end of every month, we are publishing on SpaceWatch.Global an overview about the investments and the deals that were made in the industry. If that's of interest of you, that's provided by Raphael Redken to our website. So just stay tuned. I think that can help to fill up your database. But coming back to that topic, we talked here about private investors and the venture funds. That is one element. The other one are the government or entities, the National Space Agencies, even ESA. So, I mean, last year we had these very successful, for all of us in the space industry, very successful event in Sevilla, 14.4 billion euro, and we were all happy and celebrated it. Yeah, that was before the crisis. So now Europe has to spend a lot of money to, I mean, just help us to survive the entire crisis. So, I mean, I think for the next years, the money is safe, but how will be the next round look like? And what is the impact on the project also from ESA? Can we afford these long-lasting visionary projects to the outer system to, I mean, just putting something what is close to my heart, also the large European lender. Yeah, I mean, these really big flagship projects, are we able to finance that at the end? Or is it just some paperwork we do again?
So I think you're very right. It's very important to recall that there has been there is still some high political support for space, which did materialize in increased budget as a result of the last ministerial council at ESA. At the moment, it is extremely difficult to anticipate what will be the consequences of the COVID-19 crisis on governmental budgets, mm-hmm. and and in particular in details on space programs. We got also very recently with the revision of the MFF, so the multi-annual financial framework of the European Union. So the overall revision led to a decrease of the budget that was anticipated to be allocated to the European Union space program. The decrease is in the order of €1 billion. Mm-hmm. €1 billion that is a significant loss for the sector. Now, of course, the budget has not been yet approved, and we can still hope that it will change in the future. There is also something that is, I guess, important to note is that there are also some new instruments that could be used, and in particular the next generation EU instrument that has an envelope in the order of 750 billion euros, and which is supposed to support investments, that is supposed to support the effort of member states and to support EU key programs. So we could hope that a share of the funding, and we need to see also how the funding will be allocated, can be used to support the recovery of the sector. Now, with regards to the recovery of the sector, what I personally believe is that it's not only a matter of money, and it's not only a matter of European institutions, national and European institutions, allocating even more budget. For sure, it does play a role. Now, what we need to acknowledge is that the space sector, the European space sector, has been impacted by the crisis. It will come out of it weakened, but it was already also facing some structural difficulties on commercial markets, structural difficulties that can be expected to continue. The European space sector is extremely dependent on commercial markets. So I really concretely believe that there is a need for a concerted action between private and public actors that should definitely look into how to help the sector to survive the crisis, but not only limit to it. There is really fertile ground for fresh reflections on a number of things and a number of aspects of the space policy.
Absolutely. I would like to take the question from René. I mean, first, he congratulates on such a quick and early initial assessment. And can you give examples of already taken responses from the space industry, from government agencies or academia?
Yeah, so
because that will lead over to my final question about our policy, of course.
Yeah. So on this, of course, the response so far. So looking at the space industry aspect of the question, clearly what the industry had to do was first to comply with the measures taken by governments to face the crisis. So this is what has been, I guess, on their mind mostly over the last months. And there will be, and I'm quite sure that they're already progressing on adapting their business strategy. But of course, business strategy remains corporate secret. So it's not something that we can already assess. But I'm quite sure that there will be a number of plans to adapt business to the new situation. On the public side, what happened is that most European, if not all, European and national institutions adopted very quickly a set of mitigation measures to make sure that they could support and respond to the difficulties faced by the sector. And on this, the mitigation measures, what's been implemented is first maintaining the payment plans, and this was extremely important to ensure business continuity according to what was anticipated by the sector. They also took a number of arrangements to make sure that at least on public programs, the situation was at least partially mitigated. There has been, of course, a number of delays. There has been concrete impact on activity shutdown and so on. And these delays will have to be at some point partially recovered. I'm quite sure that there will be means to partially recover a number of delays, but there will still be a net loss for the sector that will have to be at some point absorbed either by the sector, by the private sector, or by the public sector. Now, the situation was entirely different on commercial markets. On commercial markets, there has been orders cancellation. There has been delay in payments. And I think on this, I need to quote the initial assessment that was performed by Eurospace, which gives really a good flavor of the order of magnitude of the business risk. So the association actually estimates that the business risk is as high as more than €1 billion of loss of revenues, and more than €1 billion of reduction in backlog. And this, of course, will not lead to a net loss in 2020. There will be it will be spread over the years, but the impact, the concrete economic impact on the sector will be massive.
Okay. I mean, with all this, I wouldn't say semi-optimistic forecasting. How do you see European competitiveness compared to China, compared to the other side of the ocean, of the Atlantic, so to the US? I mean, are we losing even more ground that we have lost already, or are we picking? Do we have a chance to pick up on it again? And what is the role of the European space policy, the national space policies in that direction?
So maybe we will need another web talk for that. But
indeed,
but certainly it's. I wouldn't try to anticipate or to give an assessment that really depends on too many factors. Competitiveness is quite a complex topic. assessing the competitiveness of the industry with regards to other commercial actors, to its competitors, either in China or in the US, depends on the really two manufacturers. However, so what I believe the political question that will have to be answered in the post COVID Europe will be the question of the place of space. I said it a bit before, but I guess that this is really something that will be very important to look into. And on this, there will be so there are a number of new topics that are rising in the political agenda in Europe. The question of strategic autonomy, the question of economic resilience, the question of sustainable growth, the question of public safety. All these space can support. And it's very important that space occupies a strategy, is an integral component of the European post-COVID Europe. So it raises a number of questions. In the report, we identified 4 key topics that we believe will be important for the future. The first one is to give shape to a technological and industrial policy with a stronger focus on strategic autonomy. This is clearly going to be an important thing. Another one I was mentioning is the need to have a public demand emerging and really making full use of space for public policies. Another one is related to support to export through concrete action plans. There are a number of other ones, but I see that the clock is ticking. So I guess that people can also take a look at the report and find out more.
Got it. So to frame it up, what I have the feeling, the impression, what I'm taking away from that, there is a hope for space, and there's not just a hope for space, there's a big demand for space, or for Europe to stay here in Europe. But there's also the question, so how far, in the literal sense, or in terms of the universe, we are able to go in the foreseeable future with our adapted budgets, or because at the moment we have a crisis here on Earth and not on space. And I think that's important to solve our issues here on our planet, on our continent in that case.
There's a question on how far we can go, for sure. I believe we can go further, and we can go in a more adapted approach. More adapted approach. That's, I guess, what is important.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm afraid we have to come to an end. 33 minutes are running fast, as I told you at the beginning. So be sure that we cover the topics of space policy in our further web talks. I'm pleased to announce, as a media partner, the 4th saloon of the Moon Dialogues on this Thursday, on the July 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern Daytime, 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. here, Central European summertime. The topic will be planetary protection and lunar activities. Opening remarks will be provided by Jim Bridenstine. For those who doesn't know him, he's another administrator, followed by regulatory and policy roundtable featuring Mike Gold, Tanya Masson-Swan, Lindy Elkins-Stanton, and Alan Stern. That sounds a very interesting panel, at least to my ears. Please check for Moon Dialogues on our Eventbrite. Our next webinars are next week. On the 14th of July, I have Jenny Tapio, the space specialist at the Finnish government, will talk with me about the implementation of national space law for Finland and beyond, and what we can learn from that. And on the 21st of July, I have the great pleasure to welcome Niklas Hetman, Chief of the Committee Policy and Legal Affairs Section of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. And we will talk about the new frontiers and space multilateralism, even the word is difficult. And brand new, on the 28th of July, I will talk with Salem Al-Mari, Assistant Director General for Scientific and Technical Affairs at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center in Dubai, UAE, about the diversity in the UAE space program. And hopefully, after a very successful launch of the Emirates Mars mission next week. All events are online on Eventbrite already. As always, we would like to hear your feedback, so please check in with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Don't forget to sign up to our daily and our bi-weekly newsletters. Thank you very much for your interest today, and thank you, Sebastien, for this exciting talk and these are interesting thoughts being my guest today. And thanks again to my entire team behind the scenes for doing this great job week by week again. I hope you all will stay safe and stay healthy, and thanks for joining us. I hope to see you all next week. In the meantime, please visit our website or follow us on social media. Thank you very much, Sebastien. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.